Air this morning. Allergies. I need to get that Eden Pure Thunderstorm in my office. Swipe it from my kid. Welcome. The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program, it's 877-97-ERIC. 877-973-7425. Well. I think the last time Democrats were this mad at people from West Virginia was when they decided they didn't want to be a slave state anymore. My goodness gracious. They are spitting mad at Joe Manchin this morning. Apparently, he's now president. We all knew this day was coming. President Joe Manchin has an op-ed in the Washington Post that spells sabotage for the Democrat agenda. On the day Joe Biden decides to unveil his gun control initiatives. By the way, I have looked at the Joe Biden executive order on gun control. It amounts to a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. It's not going to go very far. We'll get to that. Joe Manchin, however, headline, I will not vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster. When Americans vote to send their two senators to Washington, they trust that they will work to represent the interests of their state on equal footing with 98 other senators. I have always said, if I can't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it. And I respect that each of my colleagues has the same responsibility to their constituents. It's no accident that a state as small as West Virginia has the same number of senators as California or Texas. It goes to the heart of what representative government is all about. The founding fathers understood that the challenges facing a rural or a small state would always be different from a more populous state. Designating each state with the same number of senators, regardless of population, ensures that rural and small states and the Americans who live in them would always have a seat at the table. The filibuster is a critical tool to protecting that input and our democratic form of government. That is why I have said it before and will say it again to remove any shredded out. There is no circumstance in which I will vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster. The time has come to end these political games and to usher a new era of bipartisanship where we find common ground on the majority policy debates facing our nation. So he's saying it's possible. Maybe he'll change his mind. If reporters ask him 10,000 more times over the next few weeks, maybe, just maybe, he'll do it. Every time the Senate voted to weaken the filibuster in the past decade, the political dysfunction and gridlock has grown more severe. The political games playing out in the halls of Congress only fuel the hateful rhetoric and violence we see across the country right now. The truth is, my Democratic friends do not have all the answers, and my Republican friends do not either. This has always been the case. Generations of senators who came before us put their heads down and their pride aside to solve the complex issues facing our country. We must do the same. The issues facing our democracy today are not insurmountable if we choose to tackle them together. Unfortunately, our leaders in the Senate fail to realize what goes around comes around. We should all be alarmed at how the budget reconciliation process is being used by both parties to stifle debate around the major issues facing our country today. Legislating was never supposed to be easy. It is hard work to address the needs of both rural and urban communities in a single piece of legislation, but it is the work we were elected to do. I simply do not believe budget reconciliation should replace regular order in the Senate. How is that good for the future of this nation? Senate Democrats must avoid the temptation to abandon our Republican colleagues on important national issues. Republicans, however, have a responsibility to stop saying no and participate in finding real compromise with Democrats. Working legislation through regular order in the Senate prevents drastic swings in federal policy making. Voting rights reform, instituting health care protections, and changes to the federal tax code and business regulations take time to implement on the state and local level. If the filibuster is eliminated or budget reconciliation becomes the norm, a new and dangerous precedent will be set to pass sweeping partisan legislation that changes the direction of our nation every time there's a change in political control. The consequences will be profound. Our nation may never see stable governing again. Dun, dun, dun! That's Joe Manchin, not Joe Biden. Joe Manchin, the real president of the United States, writing in the Washington Post, no chance, no way. And he throws budget reconciliation under the bus as well. Now, this is really important. It is wonky, nerdy stuff. So gather up your nerd hat and let's pay attention. It is teaching time. Budget reconciliation is a process by which once a year, the United States Senate can pass a tax and spend measure that benefits the national debt. Republicans were able to pass their 2017 tax cut package that also gutted Obamacare to some degree, getting rid of the individual mandate, by the budget reconciliation process. They needed no Democrats and the filibuster couldn't stop it. What happens is you put a tax and spend measure in that does not change public policy, and it's got to benefit the national debt. So, for example, the Republican tax cuts could be shown to stimulate economic recovery so long as they were cut off within 10 years. So that's what they did. They were able to get rid of the individual mandate in Obamacare because the Senate parliamentarian ruled it did not actually change public policy. And it actually saved some money. So they were able to get it done. Well, the Democrats have hit on the Democrats hit on a new strategy. The reconciliation bill actually applies to fiscal years. So we're currently in the 2021 fiscal year, and in October we'll be in the 2022 fiscal year. So they could pass a budget reconciliation package now, and they can pass a budget reconciliation package at the end of the year, both in 1 year, but they're in separate fiscal years, so they get two. Well, Chuck Schumer claims that he got the Senate parliamentarian to agree that they could have a third bite at reconciliation, something heretofore unknown, summoned up out of the rules. The Senate parliamentarian supposedly said they could do it. Essentially, what they will do is they will pass a change in the budget. You've got to pass a budget every year. Now, the budget is not actually the budget. The budget that is passed, it's a budget resolution, and it says these branches of government, they're going to get this much money. And then they actually pass the appropriations bills to give them that much money. What they want to do is change the budget resolution previously passed and claim, well, since we've substantially changed the budget resolution previously passed, we now get to do another reconciliation package. Chuck Schumer said the Senate parliamentarian agreed. But now Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are saying, actually, maybe not. According to Chuck Schumer's spokesperson, the parliamentarian had advised that Democrats could revise the complex budget maneuver that was used to pass Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package and unlock a second opportunity at clearing major legislation without Republican votes. Still, even as Schumer's aides touted the ruling as an important step forward in giving Democrats a powerful extra pathway to avert a filibuster, they acknowledge some parameters need to be worked out. The befuddlement that still surrounds the parliamentarian's opinion has major consequences. The decision could give Democrats at least 3 more opportunities to steer bills past Republican opposition before the midterm elections without trying to axe the filibuster. But if the ruling carries certain constraints, enduring the grueling budget process could be much less appetizing. Democrats aren't excited about turbocharging it. Senate Republican aides with firsthand knowledge of the parliamentarian's decision said it isn't clear what legislative priorities Democrats could pass with a possible extra shot at reconciliation, or even whether the ruling would limit Democrats' use of their second attempt. The parliamentarian's opinion also doesn't specify whether such action is even allowable this fiscal year, or whether any party would have the freedom to unlock unlimited opportunities to use reconciliation. One House Democratic lawmaker observed that the party can put as much into reconciliation as we can into 2, questioning the practical advantage of trying to exercise a power that no one really understands. They got problems. And now the Democrats are saying, actually, the big win we got may not be as big as we thought it was. Well, all of that is now preempted by the President of the United States, Joe Manchin of West Virginia. I cite again, I cite again his op-ed in the Washington Post. Unfortunately, our leaders in the Senate failed to recognize what goes around comes around. We should all be alarmed at how the budget reconciliation process is being used by both parties to stifle debate. That pretty much kills it. In fact, he says if the filibuster is eliminated or budget reconciliation becomes the norm, a new and dangerous precedent will be set. Dun, dun, dun! Joe Manchin doesn't want to use budget reconciliation either. He doesn't want to do it. Now, there's another problem for the Democrats. All right, y'all, listen. Remember, I mean, just a few short weeks ago, everyone was in doom, gloom, and despair. Everyone thought the world is coming to an end. The Democrats have taken back the Senate. We're all going to die. Socialism's on the rise. And I got in trouble with you guys. I got in trouble when I said, calm down. Calm down. They can't do much. The filibuster's not going to go away. I had people call in this program screaming at me over the Democrats taking back the Senate. They were going to get rid of the filibuster. We were going to get gun control. We were going to get all this stuff. Socialism was on the rise. There's no turning back now. It is the end of America as we know it. Nope. Nope. Calm down. Joe Manchin is saying he doesn't even want to use budget reconciliation. He wants regular order. What is regular order? It's something that House Democratic moderates are scrambling for as well. What is regular order? Regular order is where instead of the leadership drafting the legislation and sending it to the floor of the House or the Senate, the senators and representatives are charged with drafting the legislation in a committee where Democrats and Republicans get to mark it up, make changes, and offer amendments, finalizing it in committee, sending it to the floor where they vote on it, and then sending it over to the other house to go through the exact same process. That's regular order. It slows it down. It slows the process down. It makes the senators more powerful than the leadership. That's why leadership doesn't like to do it. And Joe Manchin is now saying, we got to go back to regular order. He's not going to let budget reconciliation become the norm, and he's not going to get rid of the filibuster. What happens if the Democrats voting out next time? Well, a Republican gets elected in West Virginia, and Mitch McConnell goes back to being Senate Majority Leader. By the way, it's not just Joe Manchin, it's Kristen Sinema as well. The senator from Arizona says, nope, not going to do it, not getting rid of the filibuster. Dianne Feinstein, who said she would consider tweaks to the filibuster, has said she's not getting rid of it. And there are, frankly, a number of other Democratic senators who know they don't have to take a position because it's not going to happen, and they don't favor it. Now, if the Democrats are able to make up gains in the next Senate, then yeah, they could get rid of the filibuster. Raphael Warnock needs to be defeated in Georgia. Republicans will be on defense because they did so well 6 years ago. There will be more Republicans up for grabs than Democrats. Republicans have the potential, though, to take back the House. And if they take back the House, the Senate filibuster becomes a non-starter because they won't be able to get stuff through the House. And it looks like Republicans are going to take back the House. The tendency of both parties is to go to doom, gloom, and despair when their side loses. And Republicans have done it. We spent some time on that yesterday on the program. There's always hope. You got to find it sometimes. And here, all the people who were thinking the Democrats taking back the Senate because Republicans threw Georgia away, the socialism was going to be on the rise. They were going to pass everything. They were going to get rid of the filibuster. Nope. Events changed things. And the Senate, trying to use budget reconciliation as a process to preempt the filibuster, died in the pages of the Washington Post today as Joe Manchin, the senator of West Virginia, says, nope, not going to happen. Not going to let it happen. So we can all calm down and keep yelling at each other.
He doesn't just have a radio show. Eric has...
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Erick Erickson. The phone number, if you want to be a part of this program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You can get me on social media at EW Erickson. You can direct message me on Twitter or Instagram. Don't use Facebook. I never use Facebook. I need to mark this moment. April 8th, 2021, 26 after the hour. I have become my father. And we should all note this for the record. I went around the house this morning, turning off all the lights, yelling to no one in particular because the house was empty because the kids were at school, that they're wasting my electricity. How is it that when do kids finally realize, turn the lights off? I think I'm the only person in the house who turns the lights off. I leave the room, I turn the lights off. Everybody else leaves the lights on all the time. Now, part of it is some of the lights in our house are smart lights and not all of them. And I think the family has concluded that the lights will turn themselves out in every room. It doesn't work that way. I wish it did. I don't have the money for all the smart bulbs. I have become my father. People wasting electricity. I remember when I was getting my grandfather too. My goodness, my mother's father would come into a room and not like the lights being on. Why is the overhead light on? Turn on the lamp. I have become that guy now. You know, I read these articles about the Queen of England. She wanders her palaces and castles and turns all the lights off. And I'm like, I'm the Queen of England all of a sudden. I got no power in my house and I turn off the lights. Oh, it's age. All right. I'm sure you care. Well, we got to talk about the house too. But before we talk about the house, we got to talk about the vampires of Silicon Valley. Here's your bizarre story of the day. The Spanish film Grifols helped set off a kerfuffle last year when it, along with other firms, offered nearly double the going price for blood donations for a COVID-19 treatment trial. Brigham Young University in Idaho had to threaten some enterprising students with suspensions to keep them from intentionally trying to contract COVID-19. The trial failed, however, and now the Barcelona-based firm is hoping to extract something far more valuable from the plasma of young volunteers, a set of microscopic molecules that could reverse the process of aging itself. Earlier this year, the company closed on a $146 million deal to buy Alkahest, a company founded by Stanford University neuroscientist Tony Wise-Corey, who, along with Saul Veleda, revealed in scientific papers published in 2011 and 2014 that the blood from young mice had seemingly miraculous restorative effects on the brains of elderly mice. The discovery adds to a hot area of inquiry called geroscience that focuses on identifying beneficial elements of blood that dissipate as we age and others that accumulate and cause damage. In the last 6 years, Alkahest has identified more than 8,000 proteins in the blood that show potential promises as therapies. Its efforts and those of Grifols have resulted in at least 6 phase 2 trials completed or underway to treat a wide range of age-related diseases, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. But there's a dark side. Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are also trying to harvest the blood of young people to stay young. I wish I was making that up. I almost said a bad word. They're like vampires. These people need Jesus. They don't need to try to find a fountain of youth. Good gracious. They literally are harvesting the blood of young people who they pay to come in and give their blood away so that they then refine it, try to extract proteins, and inject it into themselves to slow the aging process. Haven't we had like sci-fi movies about this? Soylent Green is people and all of that? Good gracious. What weird people. They need Jesus. Hello, welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be a part of this program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I need to tell you guys something. I know if you're on the left, you really, truly looked at November and you thought, Orange Man bad and now he's gone. Democrats on the rise. And then you looked at what happened in January. You looked down in Georgia and you said, screw you Confederate rebel racist jerks. We took back the Senate with a black man and John Ossoff and hallelujah, except we don't say that because it's sectarian. We got Joe Biden. And now it's dawning on you. On the verge of your woke socialist revolution in Washington, D.C., you don't have the power you thought you had. And you're going to be angry. You may see that small business out there and think, add some kindling, let's burn it down. You may see the white homeschool family and think, those are racists, we should beat them up. You may see that cop car and think, they should be defunded. But you've overplayed your hand. You've overstayed your welcome. And now it turns out it's dawning on your leadership. Y'all can't do jack. And I realize that this is a painful moment to realize. As this morning you wake up to Joe Manchin in the Washington Post saying, no way am I getting rid of the filibuster and budget reconciliation. We're not doing that either. I know it's a painful, painful thing for you to have to deal with. But now there's even worse news. Worse. It's going to shock your conscience, and I just want you to know, we here at the Erick Erickson Show, we're here for it, to laugh at you and mock you as we get into the latest troubles that you guys are having that you did not even realize you were having. And why are you having it? Joe Biden and death. Speaker Nancy Pelosi is headed into what could be one of the most challenging stretches of her long career, with little room for error, as her party attempts to put in place what President Biden is touting as a transformative agenda for the country. House Democrats will return from a 3-week recess Tuesday to a slimmer majority than when they left last month, following the death of Representative Alcee Hastings of Florida on Tuesday, and 2 Democrats resigning to work in Joe Biden's cabinet after they helped pass the $1.9 trillion pandemic relief bill. That's right, friends. The Grim Reaper and Joe Biden, possibly the same person, has sabotaged the Democratic House majority. Alcee Hastings of Florida, a federal judge who was impeached and then got elected to Congress, has died. God rest his soul. And 2 Democrats have resigned to work in Joe Biden's cabinet. They helped him pass the $1.9 trillion pandemic relief bill, and now they've gone to work for him, and you got to have special elections to fill the seats. Gubernatorial appointments don't happen in the House of Representatives. Democrats could only afford to lose 5 votes last week, and as of this week, they can only lose 2 votes to get any legislation passed without Republican support. The number will tick up as empty seats are filled through the summer, but it's a razor-thin majority, and even as those seats are filled, it will only allow the Democrats a little leeway with a 5-seat majority. As the House sets to begin Joe Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure package, the Democratic leadership team led by Nancy Pelosi will have to balance at times competing demands from liberal and moderate wings of the caucus on spending for highways, bridges, climate change, and elder care. It will be an even more tricky task with just a 2-seat majority. You thought you could have a revolution. and God laughed at you. You thought you could have a revolution and the voters rebuked you. You thought your internal polling had it right and you were on the cusp of a landslide 2020 victory. And now you're left to complain yet again about gerrymandering, how it's just so unfair. Those gosh darn Republicans you were supposed to wipe out have gotten away with it again. You know what's really remarkable? I'm old enough to have paid attention to these media patterns over the years that whenever Republicans are able to stymie Democrats, it's just those mean, awful, nasty, wascally Republican obstructionists. And when the Democrats can do it, why, by goodness, they are doing the will of the American people. And now here it comes. The Democrats have a 2-seat majority. A 2-seat majority. Let me say that one more time. In the United States House of Representatives, the Democrats have a 2-seat majority because of multiple departures into Joe Biden's cabinet and the death of Alcee Hastings. A 2-seat majority for Nancy Pelosi. And this may be her last term in Congress. She's signaling if the Republicans take it back, she's done. And she knows they're probably going to. That's why the Democrats are going to be belly aching about gerrymandering and redistricting. But wait, there's more. In the United States Senate, they have a 1-seat majority. And one guy is saying, nope, not going to toe the party line. Oh, can you say goodbye, gun control? Goodbye. Goodbye, gun control. Goodbye, massive tax increases. Goodbye. Au revoir. Auf Wiedersehen. Can you say goodbye to the Green New Deal? Can we say goodbye to all the major Democratic legislative priorities? Now, they'll be able to get a little stuff through. Democrats can get some stuff through on a party line vote still. They'll toe the line on some stuff. But the biggies, the big ticket items, H.R. 1, the election reform bill, dead. Gun control, dead. The Green New Deal, dead. I mean, you name it. The Equality Act. The Equality Act, dead. Maybe we should dead name it. All their big ticket items that they wanted, dead. 2-seat majority in the House, 1-seat majority in the Senate. Joe Biden is saying Joe Manchin rather is saying there's no way he's going with the filibuster, scrapping it. No way is he going to make budget reconciliation the norm. And in the House of Representatives, you've got moderate Democrats who are screaming about all the progressive initiatives. For example, on the infrastructure plan, some of the Democrats want to get rid of SALT or want to extend SALT. SALT is the state and local tax deduction. New York State wants a massive, 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 massive tax increase. And New York State is planning its massive tax increase on the House and Senate getting rid of the SALT deduction caps. Donald Trump had capped the SALT deduction at $10,000. That is, you could deduct $10,000 of state local taxes and no more than that. The Democrats in New York and New Jersey want massive state-level tax increases, thinking the Democrats are going to get rid of that cap, and now they're not going to. They're not going to. They don't have the votes. Liberals in the House don't want to get rid of it because they say it helps the rich. Moderates in the House say we're not voting for infrastructure unless you do get rid of it because our states need it. They can't thread that needle. Gridlock. People always say gridlock is bad. Friends, gridlock is a feature, not a bug of our system. Going slow is a feature, not a bug of our system. The ability to rush through legislation, it's anomalous. It takes time. The Democrats don't have time because they want a revolution. They want a revolution. You know, I spent time yesterday on the hopelessness and despair within the conservative movement right now. The doom and gloom and despair. Conservatism has conserved nothing. We need a counter-revolution. Well, why the hell do you need a counter-revolution? Look, the revolutionaries can't even get what they want done. Certainly, sure, they've got woke corporations out there. They're dominant in culture, but they were dominant in culture 10 years ago as well. But nothing's getting through in Washington. They don't have a lot of federal vacancies to pile in Democratic judges. It's not as desperate a situation as a lot of Republicans thought and freaked out about it. It's actually really good for the GOP. Why? Because it's the Democrats themselves engaged in infighting, and this could spark a massive wave of discontent within the Democratic Party in the same way that for years, the Republican recalcitrance of Republican leaders to do the things the base wanted eventually led to a Donald Trump and led to the crack up of the Republican Party. We're watching the crack up of the Democratic Party in real time, and the media is so in the bubble they can't even see it happening. And it is glorious, glorious to behold. They don't know what to do. They're beside themselves. And now Joe Biden is coming out and he's having to negotiate with himself on infrastructure.
Democrats and Republicans will have ideas about what they like and what they don't like about our plan. That's a good thing. That's the American way. That's the way democracy works. Debate is welcome. Compromise is inevitable. Changes are certain. In the next few weeks, the Vice President and I will be meeting with Republicans and Democrats to hear from everyone. And we'll be listening. We'll be open to good ideas and good faith negotiations. But here's what we won't be open to. We will not be open to doing nothing. Inaction simply is not an option. Now, since I announced this plan, I've heard from my Republican friends say that many of them say it's too big. They say, why not focus on traditional infrastructure? Fix what we've already got. The roads and the highways that exist and the bridges. I'm happy to have that debate. But I want to tell you my view. We are America. We don't just fix for today. We build for tomorrow.
We build for tomorrow. Well, now you know what the Democrats are doing is they're rearranging. Infrastructure is child care. Infrastructure is elder care. Infrastructure is anything the Democrats want it to be. Infrastructure is apparently defunding the police. Infrastructure is gun control. Infrastructure is whatever the heck they decide they want it to do, including cancer and Alzheimer's.
I promise you, it's not part of my speech, but I promise you, you're all going to be reporting over the next 6 to 8 months how China and the rest of the world is racing ahead of us in the investments they have in the future, attempting to own the future. The technology, quantum computing, investing significant amounts of money in dealing with cancer and Alzheimer's. That's the infrastructure of a nation. There's a new book out about how we've fallen behind. America is no longer the leader of the world because we're not investing. It used to be we invested almost 2.7% of our GDP in infrastructure. Now it's about 0.7%. When we were investing it, we were the leader in the world. I don't know why we don't get this. One of a few major economies in the world whose public investment in research and development has declined as a percentage of GDP in the last 25 years. Declined. The United States of America that led the world. Why does this matter? Investing in research and development helped lead to lithium batteries, LED technology, the internet itself. It helped lead to vaccine breakthroughs that are helping us beat COVID-19. To the Human Genome Project, which has led to breakthroughs in how we understand and fight cancer and other diseases. Government, meaning the taxpayers, funded this research. Government. When we stop investing in research, we stop investing in the jobs of the future, and we give up leading the world. When we do invest in research, what we're really doing is raising the bar.
Rawr! The reason that the American federal government infrastructure investment in research that is an infrastructure decline is because it grew in the private sector. They knew they could get patents under American intellectual property, and they could make money, so the government didn't have to do all that research anymore, thanks to the ingenuity of the American private sector that Joe Biden now wants to undo. The government spending in research in some cases may be necessary, but not in every case. The fact that Joe Biden is still thinking like this says he hadn't learned a lesson in 50 years. And by the way, he's not going to get all this stuff able to be done. Why? Because he can't use reconciliation or the filibuster. And he's only got 2 seats in the House of Representatives thanks to his appointments to his cabinet. He has sabotaged himself. Does he even know?
I really do like his opinion on things.
Hello and welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I mentioned at the start of the program, I almost had to stay on mute for a while as I was having a sneezing fit. My allergies are getting the best of me. And I had to go upstairs and actually confiscate my Eden Pure air filter that they sent me for review out of my kid's room. Now, I got a second one, and it's in the bedroom. If you don't know what Eden Pure, the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, for example, it's an air purifier, and it fits in the palm of your hand. You can even put it in your car. It has a USB plug to it if you want, and it works really well. It can produce ozone. It can kill bacteria. It can kill viruses. It can take care of the pollen and the dust. But odor is the other thing. Odor, it does. If you're looking for a small device to keep in your kitchen or wherever to get rid of odors, it does a good job. But mildew, put one in your bathroom, and it takes care of the mildew. It takes care of the bacteria. Eden Pure, they want you to try one. They've got a great deal for you. If you go to EdenPureDeals.com, you'll get $10 off their Thunderstorm at the lowest sale price if you use the code word ERIC at checkout. Now, their Thunderstorm, it is their small handheld purifier. They've got bigger ones, but this Thunderstorm is great. My son got it. My son and I have terrible allergies, and it is allergy season, and it's been weeks since I got an allergy shot. I got to go back. But this thing has been a lifesaver for my son, who typically wakes up in the morning and can't breathe. His nose is so full of goop. And with the Eden Pure in his room, he hadn't had that problem in weeks, which has been good because he's gotten better sleep. So go to EdenPureDeals.com. They will give you $10 off the lowest sale price. Use the code word ERIC, E-R-I-C-K at checkout. In fact, if you go to EdenPureDeals.com, you can see my name on the front. Click on that and go through that. EdenPureDeals.com. They are a lifesaver. Better sleep without all the allergies. Y'all, Stacey Abrams is back in the news. I want to spend a little more time. I've been lamenting the Democrats for them. Haven't even gotten to this. The Major League Baseball commissioner decided to move the All-Star game after pressure from Stacey Abrams on voting issues. Stacey Abrams, the would-be governor of Georgia, is in some serious damage control today with a little bit of help from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I've confirmed through my own sources here in Georgia that Charlie Gasparino at Fox News is legit. Stacey Abrams talked to the commissioner of baseball. And Stacey Abrams is talking out of both sides of her mouth. Stacey Abrams told the commissioner of baseball she did not want them to boycott Georgia, but if they did not boycott Georgia, the players were going to boycott the game. So they needed to take a stand on voting rights. They needed to do something. And essentially, Stacey Abrams was telling them to boycott without telling them to boycott. So she can come out and say, I never told them to boycott. No, but what she did is she told them the players were going to boycott. There was only one player of any significance, of any note, who had said anything. There's no guarantee. I mean, there were no major baseball players saying they were going to withdraw. This is from Fox News. Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred decided to move the All-Star game on his own after holding extensive discussions with voting rights groups associated with LeBron James, Stacey Abrams, and Reverend Al Sharpton. Sources familiar with the move tell Fox News. Abrams and Sharpton told the commissioner players would boycott the game if they did not move it. Sources say that Abrams' current stance, that she is disappointed about the Georgia boycott, is suspect, as she was a key player in the decision. LeBron James had publicly supported the Georgia boycott. Abrams' group and Sharpton also urged the commissioner to support other issues, including voter drives and H.R. 1, the For the People Act, sweeping election reform that passed the House of Representatives. Manfred decided the easiest way to deal with the matter was to leave Georgia. After Manfred made the decision, he told the 8-member executive committee before making the announcement, which surprised the 22 other teams. Manfred said the decision was made after discussions with the Players Association and the Players Alliance. Abrams tried to do the wink-wink, nod-nod on this. That, well, I didn't actually say boycott, but I said the players would boycott and they needed to do something. Stacey Abrams cost Cobb County, Georgia, $100 million, according to the local economic experts. 100 million. I don't actually think it's that much, but that's what they're saying. Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnock, by the way, who refused to discourage boycotts. The two of them together cost the state of Georgia $100 million because now people are going to have to show their driver's license to vote, which was already the law anyway. That's what they did. Economically punitive, and now they want to walk away from it. Now that they got their way, they want to say, wasn't me. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Note to those of you on my affiliate WGAU in Athens, Georgia. This summer, I intend, well, maybe even before the summer, I intend to be up there to hang out in downtown Athens, have a few beers, and hang out with you guys. The doubly vaccinated, I think it's about time. It appears that Georgia is fully reopening and I can travel out and about. And also, starting next week, you're going to have me noon to 3. Now, as for the rest of you people, stay tuned for more on those fronts. But we got news to get to. One thing real quick. Jeff Duncan is the lieutenant governor in the state of Georgia. And he has become a reliable fixture on CNN attacking President Trump. I know him. I like him. He's not necessarily the most adept at politics. A number of the people around him say he's a nice guy who doesn't play the political games. He is not going to run for re-election, having burned bridges with Trump supporters. He was going to have a nasty primary anyway, and he is, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting, won't be running again for office. Now, let's talk about guns. A buddy of mine is actually texting me right now saying he thought I had mentioned a gun store in Gray, Georgia. I am unaware of gun stores in Gray, Georgia, other than Ace of Gray. I think they have some rifles. But I don't really know of a gun store in Gray, Georgia. For those of you who anywhere in the nation listening to my voice right now, if you ever get to Georgia, you should rent a car and drive to Butler, Georgia. There you will find an auto parts store called Barrow Automotive. And in the front of the store, there are Yeti coolers and fishing poles. And then there's the Napa Auto Parts. And then at the back of the store, it is the greatest, most amazing gun store you will ever in your life encounter. It is remarkable. You would never know it was there unless you waded to the back of the store. And there are every imaginable gun you could possibly want. It's glorious. You should go. Even this remarkable gun store, Hollywood celebrities show up. I mean, this place is in the middle of nowhere, and Hollywood celebrities show up. The anti-gun Hollywood celebrities, no less, show up and buy guns there. They don't want to be seen by the anti-gun crowd. Well, even a place like that, a remarkable place like that, is having trouble keeping stuff in stock because there's a run on guns. In fact, there was a story out the other day that black gun ownership in this country has broken records. That massive influx, the overwhelming majority of new gun owners in this country are black, believing that in large part because of the defund the police movement on the left, that they're going to have to take care of themselves. They can't rely on the police because their progressive communities want to defund the police, so they're having to go out and get guns to defend themselves. Way to go, wokes. You've helped increase gun ownership in this country. You know what you call a gun owner? A Republican. But the Biden administration is unveiling its gun plan. I have seen the White House unveiling of the gun plan. There may possibly be more stuff coming, but I'm not impressed. Is this the best they can do? Well, yeah, it probably is, because the Second Amendment is in the Constitution. It is an individual right to keep and bear arms. It's actually there, unlike the abortion right. Today, the Biden-Harris administration is announcing 6 initial actions to address the gun violence public health epidemic. The recent high-profile mass shootings in Boulder, taking the lives of 10 individuals, and Atlanta, taking the lives of 8 individuals, including 6 Asian American women, underscores the relentlessness of this epidemic. Pause. Why does the White House feel the need to single out the race of the victims in Atlanta? but not the race of the victims in Boulder? Why? Does their race not matter? In any event, gun violence takes lives and leaves a lasting legacy of trauma in communities every single day in this country, even when it is not on the nightly news. In fact, cities across the country are in the midst of a historic spike in homicides, violence that disproportionately impacts Black and brown Americans. The president is committed to taking action to reduce all forms of gun violence, community violence, mass shootings, domestic violence, and suicide by firearm. President Biden is reiterating his call for Congress to pass legislation to reduce gun violence. Last month, a bipartisan coalition in the House passed 2 bills to close loopholes to the gun background check system. Congress should close those loopholes and go further, including by closing boyfriend and stalking loopholes that currently allow people found by the courts to be abusers to possess firearms, banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, repealing gun manufacturers' immunity from liability, and investing in evidence-based community violence interventions. Congress should also pass an appropriate national red flag law, as well as legislation incentivizing states to pass red flag laws of their own. But this administration will not wait for Congress to act to take its own steps, fully within the administration's authority and the Second Amendment to save lives. Today, the administration is announcing the 6 initial actions. Are y'all ready for the bold actions of the Biden administration? These are the bold things that the Biden administration is going to do to stop guns in this country. This is the gun control executive action of the Biden-Harris administration. The Justice Department, within 30 days, will issue a proposed rule to help stop the proliferation of ghost guns. Criminals are apparently buying kits that contain almost all the components and directions for finishing their gun within as little as 30 minutes. And they're using those guns to commit crimes. And then they can't be traced because they don't have a serial number. So they're cracking down on ghost guns. Number 2, the Justice Department within 60 days will issue a proposed rule to make clear when a device marketed as a stabilizing brace effectively turns a pistol into a short-barreled rifle subject to the requirements of the National Firearms Act. The alleged shooter in the Boulder tragedy last month appears to have used a pistol with an arm brace, which can make a firearm more stable and accurate while still being concealable. So they want to figure out a way to get rid of that. It's kind of like, Donald Trump wanted to ban bump stocks. The Justice Department will publish model red flag legislation for states. Those are pieces of legislation that allow family members and loved ones to get restraining orders or gun confiscation orders against people who have mental health or violence issues. That is, they're going to propose legislation. They're not going to try to pass legislation. They will invest in evidence-based community violence intervention. The American Jobs Plan, that is the infrastructure plan, will propose a $5 billion investment over 8 years to support community violence intervention programs, because that's infrastructure. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is organizing a webinar and toolkit to educate states on how they can use Medicaid to reimburse certain community violence intervention programs. Ooh! 5 federal agencies are making changes to 26 different programs to direct vital support to community violence intervention programs as quickly as possible. Really? The Justice Department will issue an annual report on firearms trafficking. And the president will nominate David Chipman to serve as director of the ATF. I thought it was the ATFE now, but they're just saying the ATF. But in any event, The ATF has not had a confirmed director since 2015 because the Democrats wouldn't confirm Donald Trump's ATF director. That's it. That's it. Done. That's the extent of what Biden is going to do on guns. That's it. He's going to nominate someone for the ATF, get the Justice Department to issue an annual report, invest in evidence-based community violence interventions, issue a model red flag legislation for states, issue a proposed rule on stabilizing braces, issue a proposed rule to help stop ghost guns. That's it. That's it. The Biden administration can't do a whole lot here. It's got to take an act of Congress, and there's no will in Congress to really do any of that. There's no will in Congress to pass massive gun legislation. Now, there is among a portion of the Democratic body, but they've only got 2 seats in the House now, and they've got 1 seat in the Senate, and there's the filibuster. And some of the Democrats in the House don't want to go as aggressively as the rest of the Democrats want to go. They don't have the will to do it. They don't have the ability to do it, so nothing's going to happen. And now it turns out they may not be able to get their massive gun tax through reconciliation, because even Joe Manchin is saying, nope, not going to do it. Nope, not happening. Oh, my goodness gracious. The poor Democrats, poor Democrats, they thought that they could just have a revolution. There are rules in the system. So here, this goes back real quick. This goes back to the story yesterday. The Greg Elmer's guy, conservatism is no longer enough. He wrote it at Claremont Institute. He said, the Constitution itself is broken. The Constitution itself is broken. The checks and balances and gridlock embedded within the Constitution are what are keeping the Democrats from being able to pass gun control legislation. For those of you who internalize the idea that the Constitution itself is broken, why can't the Democrats pass this overwhelming gun control initiative? Because the Constitution is not broken. It is a mythology you tell yourselves to explain your losses, and it's not actually true. Republicans, conservatives, the right have got to stop internalizing mythology. The left does it so well, and here comes the postmodern right to embrace doubt over truth and mythology over reality, and it shapes their thinking and makes them even more angry. The reason Democrats can't do what they want to do, the reason Joe Biden cannot provide sweeping executive orders on guns is because of the very Constitution some on the right now say is broken.
You can follow Erick around social media at EW.
I have a question, an important question, no less. How would you like to get about 4 pounds of steak burgers for free? 4 pounds for free. And I'm not talking your standard go to the grocery store, get the ground chuck, or get the frozen patties don't get the frozen patties from the grocery store. I'm talking about top quality hamburgers from Omaha Steaks. What you do is you go to omahasteaks.com. And up at the top of their website, you will see a search bar. And if you put Georgia in the search bar, you can see their Let's Go Grill package. You're going to get butcher's cut fillets. You're going to get boneless pork chops. You're going to get boneless chicken breasts. You're going to get kielbasa sausages. You're going to get scalloped potatoes. You're going to get caramel apple tartlets. And you're going to get 12 Omaha steak burgers. They are almost 4 pounds of burgers, 5 ounces each. 5 ounces each. Because I am incapable at this point of doing math in my head, because that's why I went to law school. That is 60 ounces. 60 ounces of hamburger meat. Individual patties. And they're great. If y'all have Blackstones, I don't use my Blackstone enough, much to my chagrin. I need to use my Blackstone. My Blackstone, it's the griddle, and I've got it outside. I don't use it enough, but I can use it for burgers. I can make smash burgers on it, where you put, and I use the Omaha steak ones because the patties, they don't shrink up like your standard ground chuck. They smash them on the griddle. They get crispy on both. Oh, they're so good. So good. And then make fries. Omaha Steaks, you get all sorts of stuff at Omaha Steaks. You can get almost 4 pounds of free burgers from Omaha Steaks right now if you go put Georgia in the search bar, and you're going to save over 45% off as well. You're going to get steaks, you're going to get chicken, you're going to get pork chops, you're going to get dessert, you're going to get 4 pounds of free burgers. How could you not love that? Go to omahasteaks.com today and put Eric in the search bar. All right, let's go to the phones. 877-973-7425. I say it slowly because Wilma, and that was actually her name, I don't know if she's married to Fred, Wilma emailed me and asked for the phone number and said I was saying it too fast. So I slowed it down for Wilma. And I bet she's not even going to call. Bill in Woodstock, you're going to be next. Welcome.
Hey, Eric. First of all, I can't believe I'm even listening to you on a day off from my woke Fortune 500 company, much less calling you. But this gridlock is great, and I might buy another gun to celebrate it.
Excellent.
Thank you for keeping me company while I'm walking. The Broadway musical, Alexander Hamilton, it's put on by a bunch of very talented individuals, and Matt Emanuel is phenomenal.
Right.
And the show itself is pretty accurate to the history. So I read the book. You know, Penn did do a lot of reading.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff. It's an 800-something page book. Read the book by turnout. I think a lot of people are doing that, and they're seeing how great the founding fathers really were. They're seeing how great this country really is. And it's ironic
so.
Because it's the wokes in Broadway that have helped fuel that.
Right. Yeah, there is some level of irony there. There really is. When you read it, so one of the things that is endemic in society, not just in this society, but around the world, is that we believe ourselves to be smarter than the people who came before us. And the fact of the matter is, you start reading about the people who came before us, and they tended to be more thoughtful than the people in our time. And my personal theory on why they were so thoughtful is because these were real life and death issues for them. I mean, they actually died over the issue of taxation and representation, and we just like to bellyache about stuff like that.
Yeah, Candace Owens talks about that. These people were making decisions that could impact everybody's future, and today's kids are worried about bathroom signs.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it really is. We are a decadent society, and by decadent, it's not necessarily a bad word, but essentially it's a society where we're living so lavishly that the real cares, we don't even have to pay attention to them. Bill, listen, I'm going to let you go there. Enjoy your walk. It's striking to me how our founders, this stuff really mattered to them. I suppose it's time to revisit some of my thoughts on that in light of what's happening in Washington, because people really are insane right now on this stuff. And the fact that stuff can't get done in Washington, stuff's not supposed to get done in Washington, D.C. That is what people forget. Stuff is not supposed to get done easily in Washington. And the reason stuff's not supposed to get done easily in Washington, D.C. is because it's got to matter. Washington is not supposed to be the be-all, end-all of our existence. Washington is only supposed to do the big things that are good for the entire country, not just for your political coalition. And people forget that, particularly the left. They have no sense of history. And because they have no sense of history, they're doomed often to repeat it, and they don't really understand the historic arguments. They find no validity. Remember, Ezra Klein used to write the Washington Post, one of the Vox kids. He's now with the New York Times. Actually wrote that the Constitution was too old. Nobody reads it. Who cares about it? This is essentially an argument now being made by some of the post-Christian right. They got no grace, and they think, the Constitution is broken because it doesn't serve my purpose. It's not supposed to serve anybody's purpose. It's supposed to guide our government. People died over those ideas, and now people just want to be keyboard warriors and complain about them. It's all very nonsensical. Maybe I'll talk about that when we come back, but I got to talk about trains too, and what is it with old men and trains? Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. What is it about old men and trains? For the longest time, in a conservative movement that prides itself on private enterprise and small government, for the longest time there has been this belief that somehow the government needed to invest in trains. And the Democratic Party as well thinks there needs to be an investment in trains. I've actually got a friend whose wife refused to allow their child to have model trains, toy trains, when he was little, because she was afraid he would grow up and become one of those people who thought the government needed to spend money on trains. She's a way more conservative. I mean, the hardcore conservative I know. She's like, nope. No trains in our house, because then he's going to think the government should subsidize Amtrak. I do not understand what this infatuation is with trains. Joe Biden yesterday told a group of people that by investing in this infrastructure plan, we should imagine a world where trains go as fast as planes. And there are people, when I pointed out that's not physically going to happen, there are people who came after me on social media. If we just invest the money, it will. Y'all, China, Japan, Germany, and France have poured money into high-speed rail. The fastest train on planet Earth is a maglev train that's in development in Japan. It's not even on the tracks yet. It's just in development. It's a new generation of maglev train, and it goes 374 miles per hour max. The fastest train in regular passenger use is the TGV, TGV in France. The TGV train goes slightly more than 300 miles per hour at its fastest, but in regular commercial use goes 200 miles an hour. A Boeing 737, the most popular commercial jet on planet Earth, goes over 500 miles an hour. Now, there is credibility to the argument that there are certain train corridors, certain corridors for trains that do make some sense. Like, for example, if I'm to go, let's see, I'm going to do this math right here. Actually, I'm going to use the my travel guide here. If I travel from Nashville, Tennessee, I don't want to go to Nashville, Georgia. I want to go to Nashville, Tennessee. If I go to Nashville, Tennessee from Atlanta, Georgia, let's say I go from downtown Atlanta, Georgia. I am going to go from downtown Nashville to downtown Atlanta, Georgia is 4 hours, 2 minutes at the fastest. In rush hour, it can be about 5 hours. There's a not even a high-speed rail corridor proposed. There's a train corridor proposed to run to Nashville. And in running to Nashville, it would take the same or longer than it takes in a car. There is an argument to be made that perhaps maybe if you put in a high-speed rail with limited stops, it would be worthwhile. Why? Because if you fly Delta to Nashville from Atlanta, it is $500 or $600. It's ridiculous how expensive it is. Even Southwest Atlanta to Nashville is kind of expensive. And you got to go to the airport. You got to be there an hour in advance. The flight takes an hour. You get to Nashville. And then you're outside the city. You got to rent a car. There's not good public transportation from there. It could take you, if you could do a train that takes 3 hours, 4 hours to get to Nashville, there's an argument there. Or let's take Los Angeles, California to Las Vegas, Nevada. If you do that, the travel times, I'm using Apple Maps right now, which regardless of its flaws is widely considered to give you the best traffic averages. Right now, to go from downtown Los Angeles to go to Las Vegas, it's a 4-hour drive. It is a 4-hour drive. You could actually conceivably do a train ride from Los Angeles to Nashville that is quicker than either a car ride or a plane ride. Why? Because if you've ever been to LAX is a burdensome airport to get in and out of. You got to be there ridiculous early, particularly if you're going to check a bag. But even if you're not going to check a bag, you got to be there ridiculously early because of security lines and location and traffic to get there. So let's say it takes you want to be there an hour and a half early. The plane ride is going to take you about an hour. And then you get to Las Vegas and navigate through the airport. You could probably get a high-speed rail from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. That's reasonable. But why should the government do it? If it was commercially feasible, wouldn't the private sector be doing this? In fact, there have been plans for the private sector to do it. Now, the other problem here is that if you were to do something like that, the reality is that the government regulation on the high-speed rail, already environmentalists are crying foul about some of Amtrak's proposals. But Joe Biden is convinced, regardless of the merits of some of these close-in proximate cases, Joe Biden is out there claiming we're going to have high-speed rail as fast as airplanes. That is not true. It is possible, perhaps, that maybe there will be a high-speed rail system. There could be high-speed rail systems that get you to a destination as quick as a plane because of stops in airports and traffic along the way. But, I mean, just consider for years. I live in Macon, Georgia. Macon, Georgia is the geographic center of the state of Georgia. And it is from my house to downtown Atlanta, Georgia, when traffic is good, is an hour and 16 minutes. From my house to the Atlanta airport, I live on the south side of Atlanta, Georgia. From my house to Atlanta airport is right at an hour. Another 15 minutes to get to downtown Atlanta. There has for years been a proposal for a train between Macon, Georgia and Atlanta, Georgia. And the train would take 2 hours, minimum, because there would be stops along the way. There would be at least 5 stops along the way, and it would take 2 hours. I could get in my car and get to the Atlanta airport in an hour, and it would take roughly 2 hours by train to do the same thing. Why would anyone want to do that? And what the train advocates will tell you is, well, in 20 years, because of car traffic, it's going to take you 2 hours to go that ride. No, it's not. No, it's not. They've been saying that for years. They've added lanes to the interstate. They're adding toll lanes. They're adding lanes now to get the 18-wheelers off the road. If anything, it's going to become faster to do it. And now Amtrak wants a train from Nashville, Tennessee, down to Savannah, possibly cutting then down to Jacksonville, Florida, which I guess would work, but I can drive it quicker than their train proposal. Why would I want to do that? Now, some people say, well, because you can kick back, you can have a few beers on the train, you can watch a movie. Yeah, okay, sure. Or I can have my car and get there quicker. And did I mention have my car? Like, for example, Orlando, Florida, from where I live, Orlando, Florida is about a 5-hour car ride to get to Disney World. I can drive an hour to the Atlanta airport, get there an hour early, take the hour and a half ride to Orlando, and then deal with another 30 minutes to an hour to get a rental car and get where I'm going. I drive to Orlando, Florida, typically. I drive to Orlando. If I'm driving from my house going to Orlando, I typically take my car because then I don't have to rent a car when I get there. I can drive around, take the family to Disney, go see relatives, do whatever. There's no point. Now, I get halfway there and I think, my gosh, I could be sitting up in first class and having a drink right now. Why the heck did I decide to drive this drive? But when I get there, I'm happy I've got my car. This infatuation with trains from old people on the right. And by the way, I don't mean to be rude, but all of the people who were pushing back on me on social media yesterday were above the age of 50. It is apparently one of the few things besides Viagra that can get men turned on these days is playing with trains. And they all get excited by it if they're over 50 years old. But right and left as well. Oh, I see the merit. I mean, you got conservatives. I totally see the merit of a train. Well, if you see the merit of a train, see the merit of the private sector doing it. Amtrak has one financially viable route. It is the Acela corridor from Washington, D.C. to Boston. And Acela, Amtrak, owns the line. Everywhere else in the country, there are very few proposals for Amtrak to own the line. They're doing one. From Atlanta to Charlotte, North Carolina. They may propose Birmingham to Charlotte via Atlanta, where they want to build their own track. They want to take people's private property and they want to build a rail line. And they actually say, based on their projections, it would get you there faster than a car does right now because of limited stops. It would essentially be Birmingham to Atlanta, Atlanta to Gainesville, Georgia to Rock Hill, South Carolina, to Greenville, South Carolina, to Rock Hill, South Carolina, to Charlotte. Minimal stops along the way, and it could get you, okay, fine, let the private sector do it if that's the case. Why do we need a government subsidized train system? We have in this country something called airplanes. And the idea that someone is going to get on a train and go from Atlanta, Georgia to Los Angeles, California, a trip that takes more than 24 hours and costs more than an economy class Delta ticket from Atlanta to Los Angeles. And for all the people, I'm not flying Delta anymore because of what Delta did about the voting law. You're going to fly on the government subsidized Amtrak train? Really? That at a minimum will take 24 hours? I had to do a train ride one time. Actually, I've done it twice. I've gone from Washington to Atlanta and Atlanta to Washington. Now, on the Washington to Atlanta trip, I had to do it because there was a terrible storm in Washington. It was a spring storm, and everything was shut down. And I could have taken, my flight got canceled. My Delta flight got canceled. And I could have taken a JetBlue flight that would leave Washington at 11 p.m. and make it to Boston, and then connect from Boston and land in Atlanta at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Or I could go hop an Amtrak and take the train. I'd never taken the train before and get into Atlanta sometime around 8 a.m. I took the train. I should have taken the JetBlue. It was miserable. The business class seat on the Amtrak, it was a miserable experience. I stayed in the dining car almost all the night, met some people who were listeners to my radio show. Great guys. A man and his son, they decided to take a train around America, go to all the baseball parks. What an awesome experience they had. He's become a friend. But I was miserable when I finally went to bed. Absolutely miserable. Now, I got off the train right by my office, walked to my office, and slept in my office until I was awake enough to be able to drive back to Macon. By the way, I had to go to the airport and get my car and go home. And then one time I decided to take Amtrak from Atlanta to Washington just to see. I got a first-class sleeper car, had my own room, had my own bed, had my own shower, had my own toilet. It was miserable. You stopped everywhere. You nearly rolled out of bed. The train was delayed. I got in late. It's like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I could have literally gotten in my car and driven faster, or gotten on Delta, paid the exact same price, and gotten there in an hour. I don't understand people's fascination with trains. Yes, for subway systems, okay, fine. Yeah, I love the New York subway system. The MARTA system in Atlanta, where I live, it's a garbage system. It goes north and south, and it goes east and west, and it doesn't go anywhere anyone wants. But some cities have good transit systems. Maybe invest in that if you're going to invest in it. But the idea of cross-country rail travel, maybe in the 1800s and the early 1900s, it was worthwhile. But now it's old people on sightseeing tours and people who have no clue or they're scared of flying. Just get on Delta. They're ready to go when you are. And if you can't fly Delta, fly Southwest. If you can't fly Southwest, guess what? There are all of these companies in America called airline companies, and they tend to go all over the place, and they'll get you there faster than the stupid train will. I don't understand why we want to pour billions, literally billions of dollars into building rail infrastructure across this country. Everyone in Washington, D.C. somehow thinks we are Europe. We are the fourth largest country on the planet. We are the third most populous country on the planet. Europe cannot compare. We can fit Europe inside the United States. And you want to build high-speed rail systems all over the country? No. Airlines are the way to go. The private sector is the way to go. Don't give up on the private sector just because woke companies are making you mad, because the alternative is woke government companies that you'll never get rid of.
News and in-depth analysis from Erick.
You know, I have real friends when I'm on radio and they're sending me text messages of, hey, here's a new beer you should try when you go on vacation. One day we're all going to get back together and be able to go out. I got to get up to Rome too. I got to get around. You know, I'm starting to get affiliate requests outside of, or we're going to go on road trips. Got to go down to Florida. Got to go over to, I need to go to Texas anyway. I haven't been to Texas in a while. And Texas is awesome, is it not? You know, the left is in absolute freak out meltdown over Texas's no longer lockdown. And it turns out Texas continues to do exceedingly well. Do you know a state that's not doing well with the virus? That would be Michigan. In fact, 4 states are producing almost half the coronavirus cases in the nation right now. Michigan, New Jersey, New York, and Florida. And of all of them, Florida is way less bad than the others. In fact, Florida is starting to trend down. Michigan is seeing a massive skyrocket in cases, an 89% increase in cases, 110 or 118% increase in hospitalizations. And Gretchen Whitmer, the governor there, who is up for re-election, has decided no more lockdowns. Funny how that works. Gavin Newsom in California has decided no more lockdowns. Now that he's being recalled, no more lockdowns. It's almost as if maybe there was some politics involved. A third of Michigan residents have had at least one dose of the vaccine. 20% have been fully vaccinated. And now the state health department has issued a new order easing restrictions in the state. And the governor is saying there will be no more lockdowns in the state of Michigan. It has everything to do with her election and also the fact that states that haven't locked down are doing better. But I got to tell you, this gets lost in the yelling and the conversation, but the reality is this. There is clearly some correlation to warm weather and states where the virus is going down. I mean, North Carolina, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Louisiana, Mississippi, California, Alabama, Arkansas, cases are going down. Now, there are some cold weather states in there too, like Montana, Utah, Wyoming. Cases are going down there as well, but cases where it's going up, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Alaska, Illinois, Maine, Colorado, Nebraska. I mean, places that have had cold waves come through. Now, no explanation really on Florida. Perhaps Florida's having some issues, but even in Florida, the increase in cases is only about 20%, which isn't terrible. And Florida is completely fully open, and masks are no longer required. And the outbreak is mostly centered in Miami. Here's something that frustrates me. I think the thing that frustrates me the most about the coverage of COVID, the science of COVID, the public health pronunciations of COVID, etc., is no one's willing to acknowledge publicly, Dr. Fauci and the like, they're not willing to acknowledge that the data changes. There's still a lot we don't know. And we've got to exercise some humility and be humble in our pronouncements. They want to, Dr. Fauci the other day suggested maybe a fourth wave won't come given the vaccine rates. After weeks of media hysteria about a fourth wave coming, Fauci goes on TV and says, probably not a fourth wave. And now yesterday he's like, oh, cases are on the rise. Be scared. Exercise some humility. There's just still stuff we don't know. This virus, the date on it is about a year old. The initial months were based on lies from China. There's still a lot we don't know. The data changed. I had Jerome Armstrong, the former Surgeon General, was one of the few people who's willing to say, look, yeah, we changed our guidance on masks because the data changed. We learned more. And frankly, at the beginning, we were afraid of a run on masks and healthcare professionals needed them. Okay, be honest. so much of the government isn't willing to be honest on this stuff. The New York Times is running a scare story that NFL games have corresponded to a spike in COVID cases. Their study that they're running and sensationalizing has nothing to do with contact tracing and has nothing to do with confirmed data of people going to football games. It's just, oh, there was an NFL game in this area, and then there was a rise in cases. That's it. We don't know where the cases came from. We don't know who got the cases. None of that. It's just observational. Oh, there was an NFL game, and then suddenly there was a rise in cases somewhere. That's not really how you do this. And yet the New York Times is running with this. Or the news media running with, oh, he got the vaccine and then he died. Pay no attention to he was stage 4 advanced cancer. The media, the public health officials and all, they're doing such a terrible job being honest and explaining their changes, and it's seeding doubt in all sorts of people. They're undermining themselves. I have such frustration with the public health and the government officials of this, and even the media and how they're running with this stuff. We need honest, clear news, and we're not getting any honest, clear news about any of this stuff. Just frustrating. All right, we got to move on. When we come back, the God particle, let's talk about it. I love this story. The media is heralding Kentucky. Kentucky has signed a voting rights bill, a bipartisan voting rights bill. It's just so grand and glorious. While many states, according to CBS News, are pushing restrictive voting laws, today Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear signed a bipartisan bill that expands voter access. They now get 3 days of early voting. 3 days of early voting. Georgia has 17 and an additional 2 optional Sundays. And somehow or another, Andy Beshear, the Democrat, it's funny how it's always the Democrats are doing these grand and glorious things of barely giving people any voting, and somehow it's wonderful. And of course, Georgia is an awful, terrible state because it's giving people minimum of 17 days of early voting. Bias. If the media didn't have a left-wing bias, I might not have anything to talk about on the radio. All right. Let's talk about the God particle, the new God particle. There's always a God particle. This story is buzzing around out there. It's non-political, and I'm tired of politics. By the way, speaking of politics, though, Kevin Brady, the Congressman Brady of Texas, is going to join me after the 30 after the hour, the bottom of the hour, talk about the infrastructure plan and the taxes. But let's talk about this. This is a New York Times story. It's actually a pretty in-depth story by one of their science writers. This is the headline. A tiny particle's wobble could upend the known laws of physics. Experiments with particles known as muons suggest that there are forms of matter and energy vital to the nature and evolution of the cosmos that are not yet known to science. Evidence is mounting that a tiny subatomic particle seems to be disobeying the known laws of physics, scientists announced on Wednesday, a finding that would open a vast and tantalizing hole in our understanding of the universe. The result, physicists say, suggests that there are forms of matter and energy vital to the nature and evolution of the cosmos that are not yet known to science. This is our Mars rover landing moment, says Chris Pauly, a physicist at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, or Fermilab, in Batavia, Illinois, who's been working toward this finding for most of his career. The particle celeb is the muon, which is akin to an electron, but far heavier, and is an integral element of the cosmos. Dr. Pauly and his colleagues, an international team of 200 physicists from 7 countries, found the muons did not behave as predicted when shot through an intense magnetic field at Fermilab. The aberrant behavior poses a firm challenge to the standard model, the suite of equations that enumerates the fundamental particles of the universe, 17 at last count, and how they interact. There is strong evidence that the muon is sensitive to something that is not in our best theory, says Renee Fatimi, a physicist at the University of Kentucky. The results, the first from an experiment called Muon G2, agreed with similar experiments at the Brookhaven National Laboratory in 2001 that have teased scientists ever since. At a virtual seminar and news conference on Wednesday, Dr. Pauly pointed to a graph displaying white space where the Fermilab findings deviated from the theoretical prediction. We can say with fairly high confidence there must be something contributing to this white space, he said. What monster might be lurking there? Today is an extraordinary day, long awaited not only by us, but by the whole international physics community. Graziano Venezzoni, a spokesman for the collaboration and a physicist at the Italian National Institute for Nuclear Physics, said in a statement issued by Fermilab, the results are also being published in a set of papers. The measurements have about a 1 in 40,000 chance of being a fluke, the scientist reported, well short of the gold standard needed to claim an official discovery by physics standards. Promising signals disappear all the time in science. but more data are on the way. Wednesday's results represent only 6% of the total data the muon experiment is expected to garner in coming years. Now, some of you are thinking, why should I care? What on earth is this? So we have this thing in science, in physics. It's called the standard theory on how the world works. Now, you know the Newtonian laws of physics. Objects at motion tend to stay in motion, and objects at rest tend to stay at rest unless a force is applied. What goes up must come down. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We're not supposed to call those Newtonian anymore because that whiteifies the physics. Apparently, the wokes don't like us to call it Newtonian. But there are standard laws, and we know there's gravity. We know there are electrons. We know there are neutrons. We know there are protons. We know there are muons and quarks and the Higgs boson, all these different particles. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to explain the way the universe works. And they have general theories, and then there's quantum theories, and quantum physics is just whacked out. It's everything you don't think. All the science fiction stuff comes from that. But they try to find ways to make it all work. And inevitably, they become stymied. And a lot of this stuff, and this is where I actually want to go with this, there are so many people in the world today who don't believe in a divine higher power, and they believe science can explain everything, but what they don't want to recognize is that so much of their beliefs are actually by faith as well. There are so many of their beliefs that can't actually be explained except by faith. For example, they believe by faith that there must be other planets out there that sustain life. We have no proof of these other planets that sustain life, but they conclude based on their models that there must be some proof of life out there. They take it by faith. They take it. A lot of people look at this and they say, if the Earth were a few thousand miles in either direction, it couldn't sustain life. If water didn't freeze from top to bottom, we couldn't have life. If the Earth were tilted on its axis a little more, we couldn't have life. If the solar system were in a different location in the Milky Way, we couldn't have life. If the sun was not the shape of the sun, the size of the sun, the way the sun forms, we couldn't have life. All of these things where you couldn't have life. All of these things look to people as, it's not an accident we're here. There must be a God. Now, the people who reject God say, there got to be thousands, millions of planets like it in the universe. They can't find them. They get hints of it, but they dismiss the idea of God. The difference, I have a friend of mine. He's one of my professors in seminary. He was my systematic theology professor. And he said something one time that's always struck with me. The difference between the Christian and the atheist is that the Christian has a firm understanding of what came before the Big Bang. The atheist has theories. A Christian has a firm understanding of what came before the Big Bang, and an atheist has theories. And whatever an atheist gravitates towards as the proof, it is proof by faith. It is a total proof by faith. They don't actually know. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to find it. They're trying to find something. They're trying to find explanations. They've got now dark matter. We can't see dark matter, but there's got to be dark matter. Dark matter explains things. They come up with theories. That is not to say the theories are not wrong. I have a friend of mine who is a physicist, who is a deeply religious person. And what he says is that God presents us the Bible as a way to know him. God also weaves himself into nature as a way to know him. And because God weaves himself in nature as a way to know him, we can know God by understanding mathematics and physics and the universe. And we can see God in it. So a lot of these people, they get to this stuff and they say, well, what is this? That there can't be a God. There must be an explanation. And my friend who's a physicist looks at this and he says, there is a God, and we're interested in how he did this. Sometimes you look so hard at the quark, at the muon, at the electron, at the subatomic particle, that you miss the bigger picture. But sometimes you look so much at the big picture that you miss the nuance. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes you can't see the trees for the forest. There's a more complex picture to look at. But we shouldn't be precluded by saying by faith we believe that God created this stuff and made it so, when a lot of these people who reject God, their beliefs are by faith as well. And they seem to think that their belief is more evolved, more advanced, when it's a by faith belief. You know, the Hindus used to believe that it was a turtle who held up the universe. They literally, this was an ancient Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asian belief that a turtle held up the universe. What held up the turtle? Another turtle. What held up that turtle? Another turtle. Turtles all the way down. That was an actual belief. Turtles all the way down. We know there's not a turtle. What is there? It is our quest, our desire, our mission, our fascination. I mean, everybody gets fascinated. Y'all, if you live in a city, you owe it to yourself to get in your car one night, find a rural part of whatever state you are in, and drive to that part of the state. Do it at night and get out of your car and look up at the sky on a cloudless night. I live in middle Georgia. We've got street lights around us, and even still, there are times where I can make out the faint glow of the Milky Way. We like to go to Hilton Head. One day, if I ever do good in radio and make some good money, I want a house on the beach at Sea Pines in Hilton Head. It is one of the few places on the planet where I go and just relax, because I've been going there since I was in law school, and it was the place I went to relax in law school. And I want a house on the beach at Sea Pines in Hilton Head one day where I can go and relax. And you can go out there in the middle of the night, and you can't have beach lights on because of the sea turtles. From May to October, you can't have beach lights on. Now, there are certainly lights, but there aren't a lot. But you can get out on the beach 2 o'clock in the morning. The air is warm and moist. There's not a cloud in the sky, and you can look up and you can see the Milky Way. The Sagittarius cloud. You can sit in the pool. This is what I like to do. We rent a house usually. We didn't do it this year because all the job changes and stuff. We couldn't go on spring break. But what I like to do is I like to go to Hilton Head, get a house on the beach that has a hot tub. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, even in the summer, it's kind of chill. There's a chill in the air. You turn on the hot tub, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you sit there and you just look up. And you see the shooting stars. You see the planets. You can see the airplanes. You can see the Milky Way. Or go out to Sedona. We went out a couple of years ago. I took Christy and the kids out to Sedona, Arizona. Now, I got to tell you, I went to the southern rim of the Grand Canyon, and I was not as impressed as when I went to Vegas a couple of weeks ago and flew a helicopter. Well, I didn't fly it, but had a pilot fly and land inside the Grand Canyon. That was way more impressive. But Sedona, I was fascinated by the rock formations and all, the canyons and stuff. I mean, you see this, and you're like, God's got just a magnificent artistic sense of beauty. But Sedona and Flagstaff, Arizona are dark sky communities. That means they go out of their way to make sure that there's not light pollution at night. Even in the city, you can stand out, you can look up at the stars at night, and it is spectacular. I've got a telescope. I love to take pictures of the stars at night. You should follow me on Instagram. It's spectacular. But I look at that and I think God's wonders never cease. And then you've got other people out there who look and they just think that this is all some sort of random act. And I feel sorry for those people because there's no sense of wonder there, I think, when they think it's all some sort of random act. And they ply in to find the muons and the quarks. And they come up with these elaborate theories. And they hold people who are faith in some level of contempt for believing there's a God who painted the heavens and the universe. And they don't have a sense of humility enough to realize that they have a by faith belief as well. But the difference is their by faith belief that they refuse to even admit is by faith gives them no hope for themselves and their future. And my by faith belief gives me profound hope in the future. One day I want to be among the heavens and go see the Orion Nebula up close, the Cat's Eye Nebula up close. I want to be able to do those things. One day I probably will be able to. In the new heavens and the new earth, who knows what God will let us do. But it's just no more by faith than the people who are scrambling around trying to find more laws of physics and then running into roadblocks where they realize that the laws of physics we know, there's one little particle that upends the whole thing and, oh my gosh, we have to start over. Or just believe there's a being out there who said, let there be light, and there was light.
He doesn't just have a radio show. Erick has a
Congressman Kevin Brady of Texas is going to join me at the bottom of the hour to talk about the Biden infrastructure plan and the corporate tax increase Biden wants. He's got lots of good information on comparing it to what President Trump actually did. The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Right now, I want to put out an all call for anyone who's got something they want to show off, a vendor. You got a product, you got a good, you got to wear. Rocco's up in Jasper, Georgia is having their first annual Rockin' Affair, May 1st and 2nd, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's going to be music, there's going to be food, there's going to be a children's area. It is free to the public. Anybody, if y'all haven't been up to Jasper, it's gorgeous anyway. But you go up to Jasper, to Rocco's. It's biker friendly, by the way. But what they're really interested in right now is if you've got something you want to be a part of it. There need some sponsors. And you can go to roccosjasper.com. You can go to their Facebook page. They've got Reformation Brewery is going to be sponsoring with them. Coca-Cola is going to be sponsoring with them. They're partnering with Pickens Pets. And they're going to have food. They're going to have fun. They're going to have family. It's going to be free to the public. So there's going to be a massive crowd. If you've got a food truck, you're a vendor, something, go up to Rocco's. But check them out at roccosjasper.com. You can also check out their Facebook page at Rocco's Jasper. It will again be May 1st and May 2nd, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they're looking for vendors. They want people to come up and show off. They know they're going to have a crowd there. And by the way, if you are in the public and you want to go, it is free for you to go hang out at Rocco's. It's a neat place up in Jasper. You should head up there. And thank you to them for sponsoring the program. The Masters have weighed in on the Georgia voting law. And people are really, really outraged at the head of Augusta National. ESPN is savaging the head of Augusta National, pointing out he's given money to Republicans. Notice that they don't do this. You can imagine, based on me saying that, what he said. It wasn't supportive or condemnatory, that's the word, of the law. It just said, we're staying out of politics. We play golf. The PGA has refused to cancel its golf tournament in Georgia. The Masters are still on in Georgia. You can't change the Masters, even though Keith Olbermann had a meltdown. How can you call it the Masters, you racists? They're not getting involved in politics. They're being responsible sports champions, unlike Major League Baseball. And, you don't have to play the Masters if you don't want to, but it's part of Augusta National. I have never been to Augusta National. A buddy of mine and I were going to go last year. He had tickets to go. And then, of course, COVID happened and they canceled it. They moved it in November. There was no crowd. I still watched it. It is beautiful. It's more beautiful at this time of year. One day I want to go play golf there, and I'm a terrible golfer. So really I would have to drive the cart and drink the beer while everybody else hit the golf balls because I would lose the golf balls. But I need to play golf. There's a golf course near me. My son wants me to get a membership so he can drive the golf cart. I need to do that. Father-son time on a golf course somewhere. And besides, now I'm done by 3 for the first time in my life, working adult. I can go hit golf balls or do something. Of course, right now I got to go practice fly fishing in the backyard because that's becoming an obsession, I'm afraid. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here from coast to coast. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. One of the members of Congress who knows a thing or two about the budget and spending and taxation happens to be the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee. That would be Congressman Kevin Brady from Texas. He joins me by phone. Congressman, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Eric. How are you? Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad to have you here. And particularly in light of all these comments and complaints among Democrats who, by the way, before I get to that, I want to gauge your reaction to this Washington Post story today that is almost a lament that now suddenly the Democrats find themselves with just a 2-seat majority in the House, in large part because of the Biden appointments and the unfortunate death of Alcee Hastings. They don't know what to do with themselves all of a sudden.
Well, I wish they had been thinking about that earlier as they were rushing through some of the most, I think, extreme socialist agenda legislation I've ever seen in Congress. They really, at this point in a presidency, most are reaching out across the aisle on issues like COVID or infrastructure. These guys are going it alone. And as you've pointed out, thanks for doing this, but you point out the COVID bill had little to do with COVID. The infrastructure bill has little to do with infrastructure.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And now this SALT deduction, the state and local tax issue, it looks like they can't find common ground among the Democrats on what to do with it. And it seems like for years, having portrayed you guys on the Republican side as the party of the rich, suddenly you've got the Democrats wanting to give a big deduction to rich people in New York.
This is unbelievable. Here we are trying, battling our way out of a pandemic, and the economy still locked down by some governors and mayors, a lot of people struggling. Democrats are insisting on a huge tax break for millionaires. Half of this SALT cap repeal will go to millionaire households in predominantly high-tax states. It is a big tax break for both President Biden and Vice President Harris. And even the progressive groups are saying, to their Democrat colleagues, this is obnoxious to be giving tax breaks, at any point to the wealthy, much less as we're trying to recover. And, of course, we noticed in New York, Governor Cuomo is trying to raise taxes yet again, and he's counting on the SALT cap to cover up just his brutal level of tax. Look, New York, these really are tremendous states, but they are so brutally taxed for families and workers. It's just unbelievable.
I don't know that most Americans understand with the way the SALT deduction works that you get to deduct your state taxes from your federal taxes. And now there's a cap that for years, Democratic states, high tax states have been able to essentially not make the public feel the burden of state taxation because they could deduct it at the federal level. And now suddenly they're having to wake up to what their states have done.
Yeah, a couple states have finally realized, look, they can't hide their brutal taxation levels anymore. They have to be accountable for it. Secondly, what this did was the rest of the country subsidized really 5 or 6 of these Democrat states and their high taxes. So, rural communities subsidized cities, low tax states subsidized high tax states, and governors and mayors had the green light to tax at will. And so the cap of $10,000, we took the national average for the SALT deduction and doubled it. So really it's the states that are the biggest outliers, the most extreme, that are impacted by this.
Now, that gets me into the corporate tax here now. You guys reduced the corporate tax. We were the highest in the world. We're now middle of the road. Joe Biden wants to go up. Joe Manchin says not so quick. What I find fascinating in the entire conversation as well are some of the major corporations that find themselves they could have a competitive advantage against their competitors if we raise the corporate tax, which tells me probably not a good idea to do it. But yet the Democrats just seem to think that if they raise the corporate tax, it's not going to affect you and me or anyone else in the country other than these corporations.
Yeah, this isn't about corporations. It's about their workers who pay the price, bear the brunt of these tax increases, because businesses, they don't pay the taxes, they collect them. So it's workers, their workers who get hurt. It is families that we all know who are counting on these businesses for their 401ks, their IRAs, their retirement. And, of course, there's no question Biden's tax increases will reverse what President Trump and Republicans did, which is we brought U.S. companies, jobs, and manufacturing back to the U.S. We stopped cold the Obama-Biden tax policies that drove U.S. companies overseas. They're going to reverse all those gains, and so we're going to fight as conservatives. We're going to fight for the communities who can't survive another round of their local businesses disappearing.
Well, one of the things that y'all did that I appreciated very much was roping LLCs more into the corporate tax structure, because I mean, I run my business as an LLC. As a lawyer, I advised and created tons of LLCs. It's just an easy way for people to navigate without having to go through a S Corp or a C Corp. And most of American business, it seems like, small business is structured that way, and they're going to get dinged by this Biden plan.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And look, when you hear Joe Biden, give misleading statements about what our tax reform did, which was really drive higher paychecks and more jobs for blue-collar families in the working poor. They also mislead that America's corporations don't pay their fair share. The truth of the matter is most of our businesses are just as what you described. They are small businesses, what the government calls pass-throughs, limited partnerships. And so the truth of the matter is that no president has ever raised business taxes to recover from an economic crisis. These rates will be worse than China. Tax rate will be worse than China and on par with Syria. And there's no question this is going to slow hiring. It's going to lower investment here in America. And I think it's going to trigger a second wave of U.S. businesses moving overseas.
Well, could you spend a little more time on that? Because one of the issues, like I use Apple as a great example, it held billions of dollars offshore until the corporate tax was lowered, and then brought money in, and in Texas, where you are, invested in infrastructure, creating new jobs there when the tax was lowered.
Yeah, at the time, thanks for pointing that out, because at the time we did tax reform, one of the big drivers was America's tax code was so outdated that we were about the only major country in the world that would tax a company here, and we tax them overseas. And if an American company competed and won overseas and wanted to bring those profits back to the U.S., the old Obama-Biden tax code at the time punished businesses, actually pushed that investment away from the United States. We changed all that so that businesses could compete and win anywhere in the world, including here in America. But when they did succeed, they could bring those profits at zero rates back to the United States. That's why we saw record levels of investment and research in America.
Now, I know you're at the Ways and Means Committee, have been there for some time, but I want to ask you about infrastructure generally, because I'm kind of, I have to look somewhat admirably at how the Democrats just change words to suddenly mean things. I mean, childcare, apparently now infrastructure. Whatever they want is suddenly infrastructure. And it just seems absurd to me. And yet I do recognize that federal taxes pay for roads and bridges and things like that. And I realize we need some of the infrastructure building. But really, I mean, come on here.
Yeah, it is. Just look, the COVID bill, had next to nothing to do with COVID, nothing about a stimulus. In fact, the White House still wouldn't tell us how many jobs that $2 trillion stimulus would actually create. This is the same wordplay here. Very little of this has to do with infrastructure. Most of it really is Green New Deal spending, a lot of social welfare spending, and, of course, an excuse to raise taxes on not just local businesses, but they're going after energy workers again. And some of the things they do are going to hurt like royalty owners, 12 million in America, mainly seniors, widowed. They get a $500 a month supplement to Social Security because of these small royalty checks, they're going to wipe them out. And so it is. I wish the national media were really pulling the curtain back on this proposal, because infrastructure, which, by the way, we all agree on, roads, bridges, ports, aviation, broadband, those traditional infrastructure, if there was a focus on there, this would be a bipartisan effort.
Yeah, it maybe because of the Senate and what Joe Manchin is saying, but it seems like we're back to grab bag politics. I remember as a kid, the Democrats were just the tax and spend party, and they kind of became some sort of socially liberal party in response to conservative culturalism. And now it seems like they've gone back to revealing who they always have been, this massive tax and spend party, which I guess with Joe Biden having been in the Senate for like 50 years, it's natural they would go back to do that. But I'm really concerned at this point with the national debt, particularly when I see China looks like they seem to want to be doing financial plays to us like we did to the Soviet Union in the 1980s to destabilize us.
Yeah, there's no question here that, as Rahm Emanuel used to say, never let a crisis go to waste. And there's no question Democrats and Joe Biden are using the healthcare and economic crisis to spend and put in place new entitlements of spending that will be very difficult to stop and to rein in. And of course, all this new spending, literally $6 trillion of new spending just from Congress over the past year, is going to be headed into our federal budget. We'll bloat that even further. So there's no question when we take back the House as conservatives in 1 year and about 8 months.
Amen.
We're going to have our work cut out for us to try to get the spending back under control.
Last question before we get out of here, and thank you for spending this time with me. What are your concerns on inflation right now? As seems like more and more people are starting to worry about that.
Yeah, and there's real worry about this. I know some dismiss this, but the truth of the matter is, between the Federal Reserve and U.S. government spending, we do run the risk of inflation. And you're starting to see that today, Eric. If you look in our supply chains, you're seeing, because there aren't enough workers to man the lines in production, deliveries are delayed, those prices are spiking. It is driving inflation in manufacturing and so many of the products you and I buy at the store or in our local community. And so you're going, at some point, that inflation is going to show up, and the Federal Reserve has a terrible track record identifying it and reacting to it. So yes, the laws of economics have not been suspended in this pandemic.
No, they haven't. Congressman, listen, thanks for spending time with me today. It's good to hear from you. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, sir. Eric, it's great. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Take care. Congressman Kevin Brady of Houston, Texas, lives in the Woodlands, and he is the ranking member of Ways and Means Committee in Congress, was the chairman overseeing taxation. That committee, one of the oldest committees in Congress, been around since the very first day of Congress in 1795. They broke it up for a little bit, but they've carried it out, the taxation policy, obviously necessary. In any event, he oversaw President Trump's drafting of his tax restructuring plan in 2017, and is probably the expert in Congress on the damage Democrats are going to do by trying to raise the corporate tax rate as companies repatriated money into this country, which the Democrats don't like to talk about, but it's a real deal issue. All the money repatriated by these companies into the United States because we lower the corporate tax rate, that money's going to go away if they raise it the way Joe Biden wants.
You can follow Eric around social
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Have you ever wondered how many lives were saved by Great Britain getting out of the EU? I know we're not supposed to talk about this. They get mad at you when you point it out. But the experts told us that large numbers of British citizens were going to die by Britain's exit from the European Union, particularly in light of COVID. The Guardian, the left-leaning newspaper of the UK, lamented in a headline, "Brexit means coronavirus vaccine will be slower to reach the UK." Aaron Sibarium at the Washington Free Beacon has a story. In March 2020, when COVID-19 bearing down on Europe, the Guardian published that headline. The European Union would entice drug makers with its massive market, the news article said, meaning member states would get first dibs on any vaccine. To make matters worse, the United Kingdom was leaving a European governmental entity that allowed for accelerated assessment of new drugs. Experts quoted in the article warned that it would be all but impossible for Britain to develop its own authorization process before the vaccines were available. Predictions of a procurement crisis didn't come to pass, but they're a better description of what happened in Europe than the UK, where Brexit sped up the vaccine rollout beyond anyone's expectations. Being outside the Brussels bureaucracy let Britain move faster and take more risks than the EU, which was hamstrung by its lack of a strong central executive. Instead of buying vaccines individually, member states let the European Commission negotiate on their behalf, hoping their pooled purchasing power would lead to better deals with pharmaceutical companies. But the bloc was so bureaucratic, it did the opposite. Thus, it was Britain, not the European Union, that got first dibs on the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccines, and Moderna as well. The UK negotiated tighter contracts with those companies, catapulting it to the front of the line. And it was Britain, not the European Union, that approved AstraZeneca in December, a month before the Europeans. The UK is now vaccinated over half its population. The EU, less than 20%. The experts say, the experts have made all sorts of wild, hysterical claims about Britain leaving the EU. There are a whole lot of British people who'd probably be dead today had they not done it. Britain is going to reopen before the rest of Europe. The people in Great Britain are coming out of their houses. The Queen has been seen in public without a mask. And in Europe, they're rethinking lockdowns. And in fact, France and Germany were going to impose Easter lockdowns, and the people were so angry about it, they had to back off of it. It's striking what's going on, and it has a lot to do with the bureaucracy of Brussels, the Byzantine bureaucracy in Europe. Europe, because of its structure, does not have a, like, President of the United States figure. Everything can be run by commissioners and bureaucrats. I had to take EU law in law school, and it was one of the most convoluted things. Britain has done well to get outside the EU, and if anything, a lot of British skeptics of leaving the EU have now suddenly realized it was a good thing that they got out of it. But time and time again these days, the experts are wrong on this stuff. The experts are beholden to conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom turns out to be wrong, and then they lack the humility to admit they were wrong. We saw this, for example, with the Trump administration decision to move the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. A war was going to start. There was going to be a war. It was going to be violent because the Arab nations would react. You had John Kerry saying that there could not be a separate peace with other Middle Eastern governments. There had to be one peace, the Palestinians and everyone else. And they were wrong. I grew up in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. The UAE, when I was a kid, redacted every mention of Israel in textbooks. They would tear out pages about Israel. They would block them out. I never saw an Israeli flag until I was in 9th grade. None of us in our class trip to Greece knew what it was. Today, the UAE Embassy to Israel has tweeted this: "We share our condolences to the victims of the Holocaust, and in their memory, the UAE affirms that the human values on which it was founded will remain firm. Love, coexistence, and tolerance are among the basics that humanity needs for peace to prevail. Hashtag Holocaust. Hashtag never again. All the experts said that was impossible. All the experts said we would never get that. All the experts said Donald Trump was a fool for even trying. Donald Trump still won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for this because they hate him, but he had a lot to do with it. The United Arab Emirates has an embassy in Israel. When I was a kid, up until 6 months ago, you could not make a phone call from anywhere in the UAE to Israel. The satellite lines would not connect. And now you've got this. And by the way, unlike what the Palestinians sometimes do, the UAE in Arabic and in English tweeted out the same tweet. Oftentimes what Arab nations used to do is they would say something nice in English and then something disparaging in Arabic, and you wouldn't be able to tell because you didn't read like they said the same thing. Peace and solidarity with Israel. Donald Trump did that. The experts were wrong on that. The experts were wrong on Great Britain. Maybe the experts need to rethink things because they're so in a whole lot of doubt. And by the way, I think we need experts. I do think there are people with expertise. One of the biggest problems of the 21st century and the age of the internet, frankly, is that experts oftentimes get outside their wheelhouse, but because they're an expert on one thing, they're suddenly experts on everything else. It's like, what's his name? Paul Krugman in the New York Times. He's an expert on economics, but he's not an expert on anything else. And they treat him like he is an expert on all things when he's really an idiot, except when it comes to a certain bit of economics. They discredit themselves and they allow people to cast doubt at a time we actually need clear voices out there.